RevX project, you'll see some of the elementary schools, they used to accommodate maybe about 400 or 500 students. Now with, so many number of portable classrooms, that goes up to 740 students to a maximum capacity. So we are both dealing with the capacity problem as well as other business.
But it's got to go through the county for approval. So we present to the county executive makes a decision, the county council makes a decision. We're not we present based on what our needs are, but we're not final decision makers because of the allocation of the money. First question.
The RevX was established two different fact assessment processes. So there is a queue for renovation, modernization, we have to call it RevX because it's revitalization and expansion. But there is a list that we've been, working through to, an independent look establish those two fact lists.
There's a question up here.
Sort of in keeping with the school construction topic, I certainly appreciate and value all of the information provided, and I do not doubt the money is needed and required, but I actually also, and I like the sort of question and answer format, but I also want it to be sort of really honest, and I want to be sure that everybody knows what we're facing, and certainly my colleagues on the budget committees can probably answer some of these questions better. I read the press release, and there's like something missing that is stark. What it doesn't say says a bill didn't pass, so you didn't get any money, but that's false. Montgomery County got $39 million in school construction money. Don't mention that in your press release. That's unfair. We constantly hear that the state delegation isn't strong and doesn't bring enough money back. But you know what? That doesn't help us any. It doesn't help us when we go to Annapolis, and all we hear from our county council and from members of, not necessarily specific members of the school board, but the general whatever, is that Montgomery County doesn't have strong delegation. So cut it out. Just cut it out. Because that's not correct. The other thing, when you want to put us in the position of making all of these bond requests, all you need to do is look at the Maryland Reporter yesterday and read Barry Rascabar's article. Here's what our budget problem is. We've got a $400 million deficit. That's in this fiscal year, and another 400 the next. Here's what some of the problems are. Rising payments on state bond debt and spending growth is hard to cut. Unless something changes, debt service will triple from 2 years ago, which was $268 million. By 2019 and 20, debt service is going to hit $559 million. And even worse, there's only one realistic way to curb that rising expense, and that's the step Hogan probably won't take, which is to raise the property tax. The only way we can cut spending, that's going to be hard. Most of it's done by formula. And again, my colleagues on the budget committees can speak to it much better than I. I'm just saying, be realistic in your requests. Don't set us up for failure. Work with us. We want to work with you. But you put us in this position and then say, oops, you didn't do it. And we're getting the blame.
So I think,
That's not fair.
yeah, so I think, from this board, I can't account for any other elected official in the county, but I will say, on behalf of the Board of Education and on behalf of my administration, it's always been a very positive,
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
shared interest kind of conversation. I think we want to continue to refine that message so we can show we're all on the same page. I do think that with the Baltimore City deal that was made a couple years ago, understanding why it needed to be made, there is an expectation that and when I say, I'm talking sort of broadly, generally, right? There is an expectation that the delegation or Annapolis can do something if it chooses to. I think what you're speaking to, I was in Annapolis the other day, and she presented all the superintendents and saw this look on her face after we had heard from other leaders about the dire budget situation. So I think we have to figure out how to help our community understand what's possible and what the reality is, what we will do within that realm of possibility, and how we will collectively push the agenda, right? Because we while we understand the realities, we also know that we're not actually asking Annapolis for more money. We're asking for the bonding authority, right? And that's different. So when we were in and I told all the superintendents the other day, I was quite frustrated, frankly, at what one of the leaders said, we'll go unnamed, said that we had asked for $500 million of Montgomery County. And I did not push back on them and say, no, we did it, because I didn't feel it was appropriate. But I said to all the superintendents, no, we did not. We did not. And people like to perpetuate, I'll get on my soapbox for a moment here, but people like to perpetuate this idea of Montgomery County that A, we're really wealthy, and B, we keep asking for more and more and more. And I wanted to clarify with all my superintendent colleagues, we're asking for the ability to bond. Right? That's what we're asking for, because we have more kids coming in than anybody else, and we should be given that authority to do that. We're not asking for just more, either more than what the state currently has allocated, or for them to allocate more, although that would be nice. So I think, we're asking for the ability to bond. We remain committed to, and that's why we have this meeting, and why we need to stay in close contact. We remain committed to doing this together to show our community a united front, and I do think our communities and our constituents and the people we serve do expect us as leaders to try to do something. And again, I can't account for how other people might talk about the issue.
Hi, thank you very much, and I want to thank Dr. Delegate Dumaine for what she said, because I was sitting here sort of thinking the same thing, and really concerned about something that you just said, which I think makes maybe move us forward, is the way that we're framing this. I think a lot of us were sitting here being like, we're hearing about this budget request, we need additional money, oh boy, we failed last year, we sound like, when we go into Annapolis, we sound like jealous babies because Baltimore had better political timing than us and bigger balls than us to get what they wanted at the right time, and we didn't. We couldn't, whatever you're seeing it as, we're coming in later at a much worse political time, in a terrible political context, with this huge revenue shortfall, and a mandate across the state from the voters to roll back taxes. So we need to frame it in a way that sounds better than what you said to us when we walked in this room. I think it's really important. I think that the ask, when you really make it really narrow, it's not that ridiculous, but we need to figure out how to talk about it in a way that sounds narrow, specific, and we need to talk about what we need to fight in exchange to get it. What do we need to give up? How do we need to have a unified voice in order to say, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this unless we get this, and here's why we need this. And talk about our Hispanic students, and talk about our growth and all of these things. But the messaging that we're getting in this room is going to fall on deaf ears when we get to Annapolis.
So I think that's where we need to determine, in my estimation, who is going to, there are a lot of people in this room, right? And a lot of people who have a lot of different relationships and a lot of different views about what that frame should be. We are eager, willing, and very ready to make sure that we have the right frame of this. I think what's going to be important, frankly, for me, and I'll speak to the board as well, that we know we have the right, the least efficient thing in the world is 6 people trying to write one sentence, right? So who are the right people that can sit down and say, okay, let's frame this. What is the ask? Let's be really, really clear on that. And your expectations around who in the county, I think you have to have clear expectations for us around what school board, county council, and Ike, how we're doing in concert, and who in this room are our 3, 4, 5 go-to people, so that we know when we're sitting down to talk about it and touch base, we know that whoever is being spoken to here is then carrying it out, and then everyone's supportive of it. So I think there's some organization, frankly, that has to go on, and some commitments to that, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we're playing operator, right? And Shirley can weigh in on that. She got her hand up, where we're playing operator, say, oh, I heard this from that person, that from this person. We have to have designated leads and a designated organization that says, this is what we're going to do, this is who's going to do what when, and how to move it forward. And we will, I will certainly be able to, I would have to propose how we do that, and work with the delegation leadership and county leadership to make sure that happens. Shirley wants to weigh in on that.
I just want to just echo some of what Josh said. I mean, part of the purpose of getting together is to recognize that we are, for us to be a team, we need to provide you with the information you need, but we need to brainstorm with you about the most effective ways to bring the message forward. And so that is really the reason. really the system has made a commitment to try to be present in Annapolis as needed, to try to participate at the county level, to try to make those messages work. So totally hear you. You know, last year the way it got crafted was after a lot of deliberation and asking and saying, what do we think is the best way forward? You know, we tried to stand up together at all levels of the county, and obviously we're hoping that it was going to go through. So the challenge for us, you know, and you roll it all back, and you guys share the same constituents as we do, right? The challenge is we've put out there the genuine need. The enrollment is undeniable. The pressures that it puts on our students are undeniable. And so the unmet need is something that we all have to deal with. So how we, you know, we're speaking to many different audiences at once, all of us as elected officials. So we need to build our collaboration tight. Board has been deeply committed to doing that with the delegation and always open to doing it better. But I do want to echo that, you know, it really has been a sequenced process of trying to think through and build on these conversations and take the opportunities to make sure that the message, we can provide really good information about the need, but work with you on the best message forward.
Yes, well, I have a question, but I wish when Baltimore City was coming up with their plan, someone had videotaped their strategy sessions.
Right. As we are being videotaped right now?
Yes.
We are being videotaped right now.
That was handed out to us. On page 5, there's a chart about clusters hitting residential moratorium. And if I read the small print correctly, which I'm getting harder to do.
What page?
Page 5, the top slide, on the one label demographics. So I assume this says these are the places that hit moratorium, even if the capacity projects are done. If I'm reading that correct, Bruce?
Yeah, that's right.
So maybe we need this chart to show what happens without the capacity projects being done, because as Jill has pointed out to me 3 times in the last 18 hours, our new governor is coming out of the real estate industry and probably having the best housing market in the state go into moratorium while he's governor is potentially the type of economic news we may not want and we may not be projecting as a state. It may not be what we want. So it would be interesting to see what this would look like, because I would imagine, just looking at these numbers, a third to a half of the county would trigger moratoriums if these projects aren't done, and that's an economic consequence for the state of Maryland that the taxpayers of Montgomery County cannot bear alone.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it is certainly part of the school construction equals economic development argument that has to be made. Right? It's absolutely part of that in a whole range of places. Yeah.
Josh, I think part of the messaging is, and you hit it with, this is the county looking to have the ability to do the bonding, to have the bonding capacity, and the state is going to look brilliant with a local jurisdiction 2-to-1 funding a state responsibility. For every $20 million we get from the state, the county will be putting in $40 million. I would think that any governor would smile at the prospect of having a local jurisdiction 2-to-1 funding a state requirement. And I think that's where the messaging can also be is, you know what? We're not asking you all for it. We're prepared to do it. Just give us the bonding capacity so that we can do it. And you all aren't spending the money, we're spending the money. And I don't understand how that gets lost in the messaging, but it seems to me that is the point that we need to be driving home.
So I think, I agree absolutely. I think the challenge we're going to have and the opportunity we have is figuring out who in this room is giving that message to whom when, right, to have the impact, so that the perception, the misperception, the stuff out there about what we want doesn't get spread. And that's a strategic question, and it's a tactical question, right? Who's talking to whom when, in the right place to understand what it is we're asking for, to push back on the misperceptions that people are fomenting out there, and to talk about some of the economic benefits as well. That's part of the critical strategy conversation, so that the right people are in the right place at the right time to do just that.
So John, to speak, I mean, we, if you think about it, we had this conversation last year. In many ways, the timing is now, and I know that we're here, we're together. This will probably be the last time that we will all be in a room together. It's immediate, it's immediate, that it can't happen in December because that's just too close to session. We have to craft this argument. So Rich has given us a way to look at the projects relative to what it means for the real estate market. There's an issue of it's 2-to-1 funding. There's the issue of job creation. There just has to be some very serious time put in terms of whatever leadership, and obviously from the board's perspective, our officers and the superintendent are spokespersons. Those are the people that need to be getting together with the leadership of the delegation to say, look, this is what we think is the best way to craft it, and to be working with the council so that we can do that. And in ways we know that. So what to me would be helpful in the time that we have together is to really start sitting together and talking about what are the advantages, what is the way to talk about this. To Mr. May's point, it does need to be in the affirmative. And it needs to affirm that our delegation can deliver this. And it's hard to deliver, but it is something that benefits the county and the state. And I think we just need to be working at how do we formulate that. And when you got all of us in the room at this time, I'm just hopeful that we'll spend a little time looking at that. Because your perspective, Rich, is very helpful to turn the way we look at a graph that we've been using for a while. But it's just that little shift really helps it to be another way that the governor-elect can understand this in his interest, which is what it's going to have to be about. Because, this is the environment we're in. So I just hope more folks will come up with those kind of ideas.
Josh, I see people needing to run on to another commitment. But on behalf of the Senate delegation, I would just like to thank you for having us here this morning. It's a good conversation, got some good things out on the table, and we're working together closely to see what we can do.
So let me, I appreciate that, and we of course thank everybody for coming today, and I want to offer a couple things. One, so some of you are new, right? And there's a learning curve, which is great. And we want to make sure that if there are things that we're talking about that you need more information on or want to understand, please, all you need to do is shoot me an email or a text or whatever, and we'll figure out who the right person is to sit down with you to walk you through some of these issues so you really understand, the particulars, because as you go back and you read that book and you go through our PowerPoint, or you will all take one of those and read this, right? We want to be available. The other thing is we will, we've already started working on this, but we will come back, I will come back to the leaders of the delegation with a 1 or 2 pager, right, with key messages and key points so that we can solidify that within the next couple weeks, right, and make sure that we do it. But then the question's going to be, I don't think the message is the difficult one. I think the strategy and the tactics around who's talking to whom when to get that message in the right places is what's critical. And that's where we're really going to be relying on you all. Once we have it crafted and refined, okay, this is who needs to be where, front of whom, to make sure that it's understood what we're trying to do. So we will commit to 1 or 2 pages with a clear message within the next 2 weeks, and it's going to follow.
Josh, I would like to reiterate what you're saying. As far as the message goes, we need a representative from the Board of Education. I would not want to see separate board members coming down and having separate meetings.
That's right.
We need to have the team that's going to be working this rather than having people in all different directions.
And it's, again, it's very important from our side as well to understand we need to know that when we're talking to, we need to know the message is carrying amongst all you, there are a lot of you, right? And we need to know that when we're talking to a couple people that we've talked to everybody, or we need to talk to everybody, that we need to talk to everybody. But we have to be really explicit about those agreements in order to make this happen, so that it's not just left up to chance.
Before we break up
Yeah.
and everybody disperses, I know we've been focused on the capital budget, and I know there's a the operating budget, but I just have to lay out there GCEI.
Yep, that's right.
You know, there's no dedicated source of funding. We've been blessed that the last several years it has been funded, but the immediate impact on next year's operating budget will be really devastating. So I just felt we need to get GCEI out there at the top of the list of things that you guys need to be aware of as a potential problem for us.
$34 million off the plan, right? About that, yeah. Okay, well, thank you. Again, please, if there's any follow-up, you want more information, shoot me an email, and we'll get it to you. Thank you, everybody, for coming.